The splashing water could not drown out my husband's familiar laugh coming from behind the locked bathroom door. I did not scream or cry. I simply slid the spare key into the lock, turned it from the outside, and texted him exactly one message saying he had 12 minutes. That night, I did not catch a simple affair. I caught a cold conspiracy running right on schedule. My name is Natalie Brooks. I am 33 years old, and on this particular Tuesday, I stood in my hallway with soapy water dripping from my fingertips onto the hardwood floor. The dishwasher was humming its final cycle behind me, but the sound that held my attention was the rhythmic splashing coming from the master bathroom. It was not just water. It was laughter. I knew that laugh well. It belonged to Grant, but the soprano giggle intertwining with his baritone did not belong to me. I stepped closer to the wood, my wet socks making no sound. The voice was unmistakable. It was Kira Vaughn. The woman who lived across the street. The woman who always waved when she picked up her mail and asked me with wide, concerned eyes if I was okay whenever I pulled into the driveway after dark. She was in my bathtub. I walked back to the kitchen island. Grant had left his phone face up on the marble counter. The screen lit up with a silent notification. I expected a text from her, perhaps a cheeky message sent from 10 feet away, but the screen displayed a calendar alert. It read, "Call Caldwell Image Group Crisis." My stomach tightened. Why would a crisis management firm be scheduling a call for 10 at night on a Tuesday? I did not scream. I did not throw the phone against the wall. I wiped my wet hands on my jeans and walked back to the bathroom door. We did not have children, but the previous owners had installed high-mounted flip locks on all the privacy doors to keep toddlers from drowning themselves. I reached up and flipped the metal latch. It clicked into place with a sound like a pistol hammer cocking. I pulled my own phone from my pocket and hit record. I crouched down and slid the microphone right against the gap beneath the door. I did not need to see them. I did not need pictures of skin on skin that would only hurt me later. I needed audio. "Natalie, babe." The door stuck. Grant called out. His voice was casual at first. "It's not stuck," I whispered to myself, though I made sure the silence in the hallway was absolute. "Nat, quit playing. Open the damn door." Grant's voice shifted instantly from confusion to a sharp command. Kira giggled again, a wet, sloppy sound. "Is she home? You said she was working late." "Shut up," Grant hissed. I raised my voice, loud and clear, speaking not to them, but to the operator on the line as I dialed the emergency number. "Yes, 911. I need police at 404 Willow Creek Lane immediately. I am alone in the house and I hear intruders in my bathroom. The door is locked from the inside. Please hurry." The giggling stopped abruptly. Natalie, do not do this," Grant shouted. "It is me. Open the door right now." I walked to the front door and unlocked it for the officers. I waited. 3 minutes later, blue and red lights washed over the living room walls. When the pounding started on the front door, I let them in. "They are in the master bath," I told the officer, my voice trembling just enough to be convincing. I locked it from the outside when I heard the voices. I do not know who they are. The police kicked the door. Police open up. And then, something terrifying happened. Grant did not scream. He did not sound like a man caught cheating by his wife and the cops. His voice dropped an octave, becoming calm, reasonable, almost professional. "Officers," Grant shouted through the wood. "There is a misunderstanding. My wife she is having an episode. Please, just let me get a towel and I will come out with my hands up. No weapons here." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He was not improvising. He sounded like he was reading a script. The officer used a tool to pop the privacy lock I had engaged, though I had already undone the top latch. The door swung open. Steam billowed out. Grant stood there, a towel wrapped around his waist, hands raised in a non-threatening surrender. Kira was behind him, clutching a large bath sheet to her chest. She looked pale. I thought this was the guest house. Kira stammered, her eyes darting between me and the police badges. I got confused. I drank too much. It was a pathetic lie. But as she raised her hand to brush wet hair from her face, I saw it. It was a thin gold bracelet on her wrist. It glinted under the harsh bathroom vanity lights. There were 2 letters engraved on the charm, C-E-H. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had seen that exact typography before. It was on the heavy cream stationery envelopes my mother-in-law, Celeste Halston, used for her private correspondence. Kira was not just a neighbor. She was marked property, and I was the target. To understand how a woman ends up locking her husband in a bathroom with a neighbor while police sirens wail in the distance, you have to understand the silence that came before the noise. It started 5 years ago when we moved to Port Briar. It is a coastal town in North Carolina where the air smells like old money and salt water. Grant had just accepted the position of chief operating officer at the Halston family conglomerate. I did not think I was marrying into a dynasty. I thought I was marrying the rebel. In the beginning, Grant was gentle. He was the kind of man who actually listened when I spoke, who hated the ostentatious noise of his family's galas, and who drove a beat-up sedan instead of a luxury import. I believed I had found a man who wanted to build a life, not an empire. I was wrong. Then there was Celeste Halston. My mother-in-law was a woman who wore pearls like armor and smiled like a shark. She never interrogated me directly. She just asked questions that felt like background checks. And your parents. Natalie. She would ask while pouring tea, her eyes scanning my outfit for loose threads. What do they do for a living? And your student loans? Surely you do not carry any significant debt into this union. She did not know that I worked as a risk analyst for Brightline Assurance. My entire career was built on reading fine print and predicting disaster. I read contracts like soldiers read minefield maps. I should have read my marriage license with the same scrutiny. Kira Vaughn arrived right on cue. She moved into the house across the street exactly 1 week after Grant and I signed the mortgage papers on our colonial revival. She was the perfect neighbor. She brought cookies. She recommended a plumber when our sink leaked. She introduced me to a book club. Looking back, she was not a friend. She was an installation. She was a localized surveillance unit planted to gain my trust. The cracks in the foundation appeared about 6 months ago, though I was too busy being a good wife to see them clearly. Grant started taking calls late at night. He would close the door to his home office, the heavy oak swallowing the sound, and wear a headset. Whenever I knocked and asked who was calling at 11 at night, he would offer a tired smile. Mom is just worried about the shareholders, he would say, rubbing his temples. It is just business drama. Nat, go to sleep. But one evening, he left the door ajar. He must have taken the headset off and put the call on speaker because I heard Celeste's voice drifting into the hallway. It was crisp and cold. You just need to cut her source of funds, Celeste said. When she panics, she will sign. I froze. I told myself she was talking about a business rival. I told myself they were discussing a hostile takeover of a competitor, but the seed of doubt had been planted. A week later, Grant suggested I quit my job. You look so tired, baby, he said over dinner, reaching across the table to hold my hand. Why don't you take a sabbatical? We have enough money. You do not need the stress of Brightline. Just rest. It sounded like love. It felt like he was trying to disarm me. I declined, but the request hung in the air like smoke. Then came the cameras. I had installed a simple security system myself before we even got married. It was my account, my password. 2 days before the bathroom incident, I tried to log in to check a delivery notification. Access denied. Invalid credentials. When I confronted Grant, he did not even look up from his tablet. Oh, right. I integrated the house system with the company's security server. It is safer this way. Standard protocol for executives. But those are my cameras, I said. It is just better security. Nat, don't be paranoid. I let it go. I shouldn't have. Tonight, after the police left and the house was quiet, I sat down at my laptop. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I opened my personal email, buried in the spam folder. Dated 3 days ago, was a confirmation email. Appointment confirmation. Voluntary psychological evaluation. Patient Natalie Brooks. Status confirmed. I had never booked that appointment. I scrolled down to the contact information for the person who made the reservation. It was not my phone number. It was the direct line to Celeste Halston's executive assistant. They were not just cheating on me. They were building a paper trail to prove I was losing my mind. The adrenaline from the bathroom encounter had faded, replaced by a cold, clinical dread that settled in my marrow. I sat at the kitchen island, the silence of the house pressing against my eardrums. I needed to see the damage. I opened the banking app on my phone, the blue light of the screen harsh in the dim kitchen. My thumb hovered over the Joint Savings tab. It was grayed out, access denied. I clicked on the checking account. The balance was still there, but my daily withdrawal limit had been altered. It was no longer $5,000. It was now $200. It was an allowance. It was enough to buy groceries for the week, but not enough to hire a lawyer. I tried to log into my credit card portal. A red banner stretched across the top of the screen. Card reported lost, stolen. Replacement sent to primary account holder address. Grant was the primary holder. He had reported my card lost at 2 p.m. that day. He had done it hours before he came home to meet Kira in our bathtub. This was not a reaction to a marital fight. This was a preemptive strike. I moved to the laptop. I needed to check the mortgage. I found an email in the trash folder, time-stamped from yesterday. It was a DocuSign request for a refinance application on our home. I scrolled through the fine print, my risk analyst eyes catching the anomaly immediately. Buried in paragraph 42 was a clause stating that by signing, the secondary borrower me waived all future claims to the Halston family trust assets in exchange for a fixed one-time payout of $10,000. They were trying to trick me into signing away my future for the price of a used car. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Kira. "Are you okay if you need to talk?" "I can come over." I stared at the screen. She did not want to comfort me. She wanted a recording. She wanted me to scream, to threaten her, to say something that could be used in court to prove I was unstable. I did not reply. I turned back to the laptop and checked the downloads folder. Grant must have synced his cloud account to the home computer recently because a file I did not recognize was sitting at the top of the list. It was a PDF titled Separation Narrative Draft. I opened it. It did not look like a legal document. It read like a press release. Key talking points. Natalie's increasing erratic behavior. History of mood swings. The family requests privacy while she seeks the help she needs. My breath hitched. They are writing the story, I whispered to the empty room. They are writing the ending before it happens. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Jenna, an old colleague from Brightline Assurance. I hesitated, then answered. "Nat, is everything okay?" Jenna's voice was low. "Why do you ask?" "Listen, I shouldn't be telling you this," Jenna said. "But HR got a call today, a formal inquiry. Someone claiming to be doing a background check for a volunteer position you applied for. They asked if you had ever been disciplined for impulsive behavior or workplace violence. I have never applied for a volunteer position," I said, my voice flat. "I know," Jenna replied. "I told them you were the most level-headed analyst we ever had. But Nat, the guy on the phone, he sounded like he was checking boxes on a list. Be careful." I hung up. The picture was coming into focus. The affair was just the trigger. The real weapon was the character assassination. They were not just trying to divorce me. They were trying to delete my credibility so that when I spoke up, no one would believe me. I did not cry. I opened a new spreadsheet. I named it Timeline. I began to log everything. The time of the police arrival, the text from Kira, the altered bank limits, the refinance email. I was not writing a diary. I was building a case file. I went back to the bank statements, looking for patterns. I found it in the miscellaneous transfers. Every Tuesday for the last 2 months, a transfer of $3,000 had gone out to a vendor listed as CIG Consult. I cross-referenced it with the calendar notification I had seen on Grant's phone earlier, Caldwell Image Group. He was paying them out of our joint funds to orchestrate my destruction. I checked my email one last time, clicking into the spam folder. A message from an unknown sender sat there, unread. The subject line made my blood run cold. Interview request when jealousy becomes a public risk. I clicked it open. Dear Ms. Brooks, we are working on a local interest piece about the dangers of domestic obsession and how misunderstandings can escalate into police involvement. We heard there was an incident at your home tonight. Would you like to comment on your side of the story? It was sent 20 minutes ago. The police report had not even been filed yet. They were already trying to bait me into a public outburst. You want a crazy wife, I said to the glowing screen. I will not give you one. The morning after the police left, I made a decision that likely saved my life. I did not log on to social media. I did not post a vague, tearful quote about betrayal on Instagram. I did not send Grant a long, angry text message detailing his infidelity. In the modern age, silence is not just golden. It is strategic. I decided that from this moment on, every single word I communicated to my husband would be through legal documents. My first stop was the bank, but not to withdraw money. I went to the safety deposit box vault. I placed a USB drive containing the audio recording from the bathroom inside the metal drawer. Next to it, I placed a prepaid burner phone that I had bought with cash at a gas station. This phone was my lifeline. It was the only number I would give to my lawyer. I drove an hour to Wilmington to meet Jordan Pike. Jordan was a legend in North Carolina family law, known for wearing stilettos that looked like weapons and for shredding the prenuptial agreements of the old Southern aristocracy. She did not offer me tea or sympathy. She offered me a strategy. They will make you tired, Natalie, Jordan said, leaning back in her leather chair, her eyes scanning the timeline I had printed out. They do not play to win in the first round. They play to exhaust you. They want you to run out of money, run out of patience, and eventually just sign whatever they put in front of you so the pain stops. Do not let them break you. I am not broken, I said, though my hands were cold. I am prepared. We moved quickly. I told Jordan about a side project I had been developing late at night, a spending management application designed for families. It was still in beta, but the code was mine. If Grant's lawyers argued that I developed it while supported by his income, they could claim it as marital property. Jordan immediately filed paperwork to transfer the intellectual property rights into a separate holding entity I had established years ago. We were locking the gates before they even realized there was a castle to raid. Next, I focused on the house. I contacted the security company and requested a physical copy of the service logs. The report was damning. It showed that the request to change the master codes and the router password had come from Grant's email address 3 days ago. More importantly, it showed a request to disable the camera covering the side entrance, the exact blind spot Kira would need to enter unseen. I needed a witness who wasn't on a payroll. I went to see Darla Mendez. Darla was a retired postal worker who lived 2 houses down. She spent her days gardening and watching the street with the precision of a hawk. I saw her, Darla said, handing me a glass of lemonade on her porch, that little blonde thing from across the street. She has been going into your house every Tuesday and Thursday for a month, usually about 10 minutes after you pull out of the driveway. I didn't want to cause trouble. Honey, I thought maybe you knew. I need you to write that down. Darla, I said gently, I need you to sign it and have it notarized. Can you do that for me? You bet I can, she replied, her jaw setting. I hate a sneak, to inoculate myself against the crazy wife narrative. I drove straight to a private clinic and paid cash for a full toxicology screening and a voluntary psychological evaluation. I wanted a doctor to certify, with a timestamp, that I was sober, sane, and rational. When they released their crisis narrative, I would have a medical certificate proving it was a lie. Back in Jordan's office, we prepared the litigation hold notice. It was a formal letter sent to Grant, Celeste, and the Halston Corporation, legally demanding the preservation of all data. If they deleted a single text message or email after receiving this, it would be a felony. "We are freezing them in place," Jordan said as she reviewed the documents. Then she stopped. She frowned, pulling a page from my marriage contract closer to her face. She adjusted her glasses. "Natalie," Jordan said, her voice dropping, "come look at this." I walked around the desk. She was pointing to the bottom of the prenuptial agreement, specifically at an addendum attached to the very last page. "I remember signing the main contract," I said, "but I do not remember this page. Look at the signature." Jordan pointed. "It is your name, but the ink is slightly different, fainter. And look at the date. This was dated 3 days after the wedding. Did you sign anything after the ceremony?" "No," I whispered. I don't think so." "Unless it was mixed in with the vendor checks. This clause," Jordan read, tapping the paper with a manicured nail, "states that any infidelity clause is void if the spouse is found to be mentally incapacitated or under psychological duress at the time of the separation." I stared at the paper. They had not just planned the affair. They had planted a trapdoor in our marriage contract years ago, waiting for the day they needed to declare me crazy to save their fortune. "They really thought of everything," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and rage. Jordan looked up at me, a dangerous smile forming on her lips. "Not everything. They forgot to check if you actually signed it. This isn't just a bad contract. Natalie, this is fraud." The next morning, I decided to become a hunter. I sat in my home office with a fresh pot of coffee and logged into the state licensing board database. I searched for Kira Vaughn. Her real estate license was active, but there was a flag for a disciplinary review in Virginia 3 years ago. I clicked deeper into the history. Before she was Kira Vaughn, she was listed under her maiden name, Kira L. Caldwell. I froze. I pulled up the invoice I had found in the bank statements for the crisis management firm my husband had been paying, Caldwell Image Group. The pieces slammed together with the force of a car crash. Kira was not just a flirty neighbor. She was a blood relative, or at least an affiliate of the firm hired to manage the crisis of our marriage. She was an asset. I realized then that my husband was not merely cheating on me. He was running an operation. Later that afternoon, I saw a digital flyer for Celeste's upcoming charity gala at the Seabriar Yacht and Social Club. Listed prominently under the organizing committee was the media coordinator. The name was Kira Vaughn. She was on the payroll. She had been embedded in my life to collect data. Every time she asked about my day, every time she asked if Grant and I were fighting, she was not being a friend. She was building a dossier on my emotional triggers. My phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. "If you want to survive this, do not trust their lawyers. They have doctors and press ready. Meet me at the Roasted Bean in 30 minutes. I went. I sat in the back corner of the coffee shop, my back to the wall. A young woman in a hooded sweatshirt slid into the seat opposite me. She looked tired, her eyes darting around the room. "I am Rowan Hale," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I used to be a contract assistant at Caldwell. They fired me 2 days ago because I refused to alter the metadata on some documents regarding your case. Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because what they are doing to you is sick," Rowan said. She slid a napkin across the table. "They are building what they call an incident package. It is a pre-written legal kit. Restraining orders, emergency custody filings, and affidavits from paid witnesses claiming you are dangerous. They are just waiting for you to explode. Explode, I asked. Scream. Hit someone. Throw a vase. Anything, Rowan explained, her hands shaking slightly around her cup. The second you lose your temper in public or on record, they file the package. They will ask for an emergency involuntary commitment. They want to institutionalize you. Natalie, if you are in a facility, you cannot contest the divorce or the trust fund waiver. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. So they are waiting for a reaction. Exactly. Rowan nodded. So you have to be ice. You have to be boring. Do not give them a single pixel of anger. When I got back to the house, my phone rang. It was Grant. I immediately started the recording app on my burner phone and held it to the speaker of the landline. Nat, Grant said, his voice dripping with faux concern. I have been thinking. You sounded so manic the other night. Maybe you should take a break. There is this wellness center in Vermont called Greenwood. I could book you a stay for 3 weeks. Just to reset. What do you think? It sounded like a loving husband offering a vacation. But I knew what it was. If I agreed to go to a wellness center, his lawyers would frame it as an admission of mental instability. I am feeling perfectly fine. Grant, I said, my voice steady and monotone. I have a physical checkup scheduled tomorrow. I will let the doctors decide if I need rest. Come on. Nat, don't be difficult, he stammered. I am hanging up now, I said, and placed the receiver down gently. I looked back at the notes I had taken from Rowan. There was one last thing she had told me before she ran out of the coffee shop, something that haunted me more than the threats. The other night, Rowan had said, leaning in close. The bathroom. That was not an accident. They knew you were coming home. They have a file on the server called the Bathtub trigger. They wanted you to catch them. They were banking on you breaking the door down or attacking her. That was supposed to be the moment you went to jail. I sat in the silence of my kitchen. They had staged the most painful moment of my life as a piece of theater, hoping I would play my part. But I had gone off script. And now, I was rewriting the entire play. The war moved from my kitchen table to the sleek, glass-walled conference room of Jordan's law firm in Wilmington. We were not fighting with shouts or tears anymore. We were fighting with metadata and subpoenas. Jordan slammed a thick stack of papers onto the mahogany table. It was the result of our emergency motion to compel discovery regarding the digital footprint of my home security system. We got them, Jordan said, her voice tight with satisfaction. The court forced the internet service provider to release the connection logs. The command to disable your side door camera and change the administrative passwords did not come from a generic mobile signal. It came from a static IP address registered to a commercial office suite in downtown Charlotte, specifically the servers of the Caldwell Image Group. I looked at the log. It was cold, hard proof. My husband had not just forgotten a password, he had handed the digital keys of our home to a corporate hit squad. But the next document was even worse. Among the vendor contracts for the Halston conglomerate, hidden under a generic consulting header, was a service agreement for something called spousal risk containment. Risk containment. I read aloud, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I am not a wife to them. I am a liability to be managed, and you are paying for your own destruction, Jordan added, sliding a forensic accounting report toward me. Look at the joint checking account. I followed her finger. There were dozens of withdrawals, all just under the reporting threshold of $10,000. They were labeled as miscellaneous lifestyle expenses, but they matched the invoice dates from Caldwell. Grant was using our marital assets to fund the campaign to paint me as insane. We need to lock this down, Jordan said. I am filing for a full protective order and a data preservation injunction. This is not about emotions. Natalie, this is about freezing their ability to manufacture more evidence. We moved to the witness list. Darla Mendez had come through. Her notarized affidavit was precise. She detailed 17 separate occasions where Kira Vaughn entered my home while I was at work, often carrying nothing but a purse, and staying for hours. She noted that Kira never used a key. The door was always unlocked remotely right before she arrived. Then I showed Jordan what I had found in Grant's Venmo history, a transaction to a local life coach who had been ready to testify that I had anger management issues. The memo line just said consultation, but the date aligned perfectly with the day the separation narrative was drafted. They bought everyone. I whispered. Is there anyone they do not own? They do not own the rules of their own money, Jordan said. You made that call to the former accountant. I nodded. I had tracked down Marcus Thorne, the former financial controller for the Halston family. Celeste had fired him 2 years ago for being too rigid about compliance. He was more than happy to talk. Marcus told me about the family trust structure. I explained. He said Celeste is terrified of one thing, the morality clause in the bylaws. If a voting member uses trust assets to fund illegal activities or campaigns that bring verifiable reputational harm through fabrication, their voting rights can be suspended by the board. Jordan's eyes lit up. If we can prove they used trust money to pay Caldwell to fabricate a mental health crisis for you. Celeste loses her seat. She loses control of the company. We do not need to ask for a settlement, I realized, feeling a surge of power. We need to threaten her throne. Jordan leaned in, pulling the copy of the prenuptial agreement with the faint ink addendum we had discovered earlier. It gets better. I read the fine print of this fraudulent addendum again. They designed it to trap you, but they were too specific. She pointed to paragraph 14. Read this, Jordan commanded. I squinted at the faded text. In the event of infidelity occurring within the primary marital residence. I paused, my heart hammering against my ribs. The betrayed party reserves the right to trigger an immediate, mandatory third-party audit of all associated family funds to ensure no marital assets were used to facilitate the affair. I looked up at Jordan. The silence in the room was electric. The bathtub, I said, my voice trembling. They wanted the bathtub scene to humiliate me. They wanted it to be at home so I would react and get arrested on my own property. But because they staged it in the house, they triggered the audit clause. Jordan finished, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. By bringing her into your tub, Grant just gave you the legal right to open every single one of his mother's bank vaults. They handed us the murder weapon. Natalie, now let's use it. The local newspaper was already warming up the printing presses for the headline Celeste Halston had bought and paid for Grant Halston. The family man Port Briar needs? My husband was officially announcing his candidacy for the town council. The campaign flyers featured a photo of us from 2 years ago, walking on the beach, looking like the picture of domestic bliss. I did not go on Facebook to rant. I did not spray paint cheater on his campaign signs. Instead, I sent a courier to the campaign headquarters with a formal cease and desist letter drafted by Jordan. It was simple. It stated that I, Natalie Brooks, retained the exclusive rights to my likeness, and I formally denied permission for my image to be used in any political materials. If they used a single photo of me to sell his lie, we would sue for misappropriation of identity. That evening, the Seabriar Yacht and Social Club was glowing with fairy lights for the launch gala. I was not invited, but as a current shareholder in the community association, I had a right to be on the premises. I walked in at 7 o'clock. I wore a simple, severe black dress and no jewelry. I did not cling to Jordan Pike's arm. I walked beside her as an equal. We did not cause a scene. We simply stood near the bar, ordering sparkling water, existing as living, breathing contradictions to the happy family narrative Grant was trying to spin on the stage. The room noticed. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind over water. Celeste was on the podium, freezing mid-smile when she saw me. Grant looked like he was about to vomit. Then Kira approached. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, likely paid for by the consulting fees from my joint account. She tried to play the role she had rehearsed, the concerned neighbor bridging the gap. "Natalie," she said, her voice dropping to a breathy, performative whisper, I I am so sorry about the confusion the other night. I just wanted to see if we could talk. Maybe smooth things over. I looked at her. I did not see a rival. I saw an employee. Tell Caldwell I kept the logs, I said, my voice low and hard. Kira blinked, her mask slipping. What the IP logs? I continued, and tell them that Jordan just filed a notice with the State Ethics Board regarding your real estate license. Tampering with evidence in a domestic dispute is a felony. Kira, good luck selling houses from a cell. She backed away, her face draining of color. She vanished into the crowd. While the speeches droned on, I met quietly with a man named Elias Vance on the patio. Elias was an investigative journalist for a statewide paper, one of the few not owned or influenced by the Halston network. I did not give him gossip. I did not give him the sob story of a betrayed wife. I handed him a folder containing the Caldwell contract, the invoice for spousal risk containment, and the bank records showing the payments came from the Halston corporate accounts. I do not care who sleeps with whom, Elias said, flipping through the pages. Neither do I replied. But your readers might care that a candidate for town council is embezzling corporate funds to hire a crisis firm to harass a private citizen. Ask yourself, Elias, who is paying for the microphone he is speaking into right now? The article went online the next morning. The headline was not about adultery. It read, Halston heir accused of misusing corporate assets for private surveillance. The effect was immediate. By noon, 3 major donors had pulled their support. They could stomach a cheating husband, but they could not stomach a financial liability. The scandal was not moral, it was fiscal. That is the only language people like Celeste understand. Grant called me while I was eating lunch. Nat, please. He sounded desperate, his breath hitching. You have to stop this. Mom is... She is destroying the office. We can fix this. Just retract the statement. Why are you making this so big? I am not making it big, I said calmly, taking a sip of my tea. I am making it clear. It was just a mistake, he shouted. Kira was just a mistake. Kira was a line item in a budget. Grant. And now the shareholders are auditing the books. I hung up, and then came the news that broke the dam. A major philanthropist, who had donated $500,000 to the Halston Community Fund, demanded an internal audit after reading Elias's article. The audit results were leaked within hours. The money used to pay Caldwell Image Group had not come from the general operating budget. It had been siphoned from the charity fund meant for the local children's hospital. Celeste Halston had not just tried to frame me. She had stolen from sick children to do it. And I had the receipts. The retribution from the Halston empire did not come in the form of a hitman in the night. It arrived via courier in 3 heavy bankers' boxes. The law firm they hired was a shark tank out of Washington, D.C., costing more per hour than I made in a week. They served me with a request for production of documents that was 200 pages long. They demanded every text message, every email, every receipt, and every social media interaction I had generated since the day I met Grant. They wanted to bury me in paper until I suffocated. They underestimated me. I did not panic. I spent my evenings organizing my life into folders labeled by date, source, and checksum hash values to prove authenticity. When Jordan asked for a document, I did not hand her a shoebox of receipts. I handed her a digital index. We responded to their 200 pages with a single, perfectly organized flash drive. Then they detonated their mine. They filed the incident package with the court. It was a terrifying work of fiction portraying me as a paranoid, jealous stalker who posed a danger to myself and others. They cited my obsessive behavior regarding the security cameras and my delusional accusations about the neighbors. Kira played her part, too. She filed for an emergency restraining order, claiming I was harassing her. In her filing, she stated that I had come to her door repeatedly, screaming threats. It is a lie, I told Jordan in the hallway of the courthouse. We know, Jordan said, adjusting her blazer. And we can prove it. Inside the courtroom, We presented the affidavit from Darla Mendez and the street-facing camera footage from 3 other neighbors. The video evidence showed a quiet street. It showed me leaving for work and coming home. It showed Kira crossing the street to my house, but never me going to hers. Not once. The judge dismissed Kira's petition in 5 minutes. That was when we played our ace. Rowan Hale, the former Caldwell assistant, agreed to testify via deposition. She was terrified, but Jordan secured a guarantee that her testimony would be sealed from the public record to protect her future employment. Rowan confirmed that she had been ordered to alter the creation dates on the files in the incident package to make them look like they existed before the bathtub incident. They were manufacturing history. Jordan moved for an immediate forensic imaging of Grant's personal devices. "Objection!" the Halston lawyer shouted, actually standing up. "This is an invasion of privacy and a fishing expedition into the proprietary business dealings of the Halston Corporation. The petitioner has already established a prima facie case of evidence tampering," the judge said, peering over his glasses. "Motion granted. Surrender the devices by noon tomorrow." The forensic report that came back 2 days later was the smoking gun. Buried in the drafts folder of Grant's email, recovered despite his attempt to delete it, was a document titled Bathtub Narrative. It outlined the plan in 3 cold phases. Phase 1, provoke. Phase 2, public sympathy. Phase 3, institutionalize. I sat in Jordan's office, reading the words on the screen. The room felt airless. "They did not want a divorce," I whispered, my voice trembling. "They wanted to lock me away. If I am institutionalized, Celeste keeps control of my voting proxy in the trust. They were going to put me in a hospital to save their board seats." "It is worse than just board seats," Jordan said, flipping to the final page of the forensic accounting report. "I found the governance clause in the family trust. If a beneficiary uses trust funds to conduct a malicious campaign against a spouse that results in proven reputational damage, the voting rights of that beneficiary are suspended and transferred temporarily to the aggrieved spouse." "So we take Celeste's vote," I said. "We take the vote of whoever authorized the payments," Jordan corrected. "We assumed it was Celeste pulling the strings. We assumed Grant was just the weak son doing what Mommy told him." She slid a digital copy of the check across the desk. It was the initial retainer for the Caldwell Image Group, the payment that started the surveillance, the stalking, and the plan to gaslight me into an asylum. "Look at the signature, Natalie." I looked. I wanted it to be Celeste's elegant, sharp script. I wanted to believe that the man I slept next to for 5 years was just a coward, a victim of his mother's ambition. But the signature was messy and looped. It was Grant's. He signed it," I stammered, feeling tears prick my eyes for the first time in weeks. "He did not just go along with it, he authorized it." "He pushed the button," Jordan said softly. "He paid them to destroy you." I stared at the signature until the lines blurred. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was done grieving the man I thought he was. It was time to destroy the man he actually was. The summons arrived via a courier at 8 in the morning. It was an invitation to a private suite at the Harborline Grand Hotel in Charlotte. The wording was polite, but the subtext was a command. Celeste Halston wanted to settle. She promised a generous sum in exchange for total silence. "It is a trap," Jordan said as we drove toward the city skyline. "That hotel is their turf. They control the staff, the security, and the exits." "I know," I said, looking out the window. "That is why we are bringing insurance. We did not go alone. I hired a certified court stenographer and a videographer to accompany us. When we walked into the penthouse suite, Celeste's legal team tried to block them at the door. "This is a private family meeting," her lead counsel snarled. "This is a settlement negotiation regarding a potential criminal conspiracy," Jordan countered, her voice sharp as glass. "Under North Carolina law, my client has the right to an accurate record. Either they stay, or we leave and go straight to the district attorney." Celeste waved her hand dismissively from the velvet armchair. Let them stay. It will not matter once she signs. Grant was there, sitting by the window. He looked pale, his eyes hollow. He would not look at me. Before I even sat down. I pulled my phone out and sent a single text to my contact at the bank. It was the signal to execute the document I had signed an hour ago, the formal demand to trigger the mandatory audit clause based on the infidelity provision. I had started the clock before they even opened their mouths. Celeste slid a leather folder across the mahogany coffee table. Inside was a non-disclosure agreement. It was thick. $5 million, Celeste said, her voice smooth. Tax-free? You walk away. You never speak the name Halston again. You destroy the recordings. You retract the statements about the funds. I did not touch the folder. I looked her dead in the eye. Is this money to keep me quiet about your son sleeping with the neighbor I asked? Or is it to keep me quiet about the fact that you used the Children's Charity Fund to pay Caldwell Image Group to destroy me? The room went dead silent. Celeste froze for exactly 1 second. It was a micro-expression of pure panic, and the stenographer's fingers flew across her machine, capturing the hesitation. Grant turned his head, looking at his mother as if he had never seen her before. I do not know what you are talking about, Celeste said, recovering her composure. That is a slanderous accusation. If you repeat that outside this room, I will have the press paint you as a paranoid schizophrenic by morning. Threatening to defame a witness to coerce a signature is a felony. Mrs. Halston, Jordan interjected calmly. I reached into my bag and pulled out the forensic report we had extracted from Grant's devices. I placed the email printout on top of her NDA. The subject line read, Bathtub Narrative Phase 3. Institutionalize. You were not going to divorce me, I said. You were going to lock me up. You drafted the paperwork to have me committed to a facility in Vermont so you could seize my voting rights in the trust. Grant stood up. Mom, what is this? Sit down. Grant? Celeste snapped. My burner phone buzzed in my lap. It was a message from Rowan. It was an image file, a budget allocation sheet from Caldwell. One line item was highlighted in yellow neighbor placement and rapport building agent K. Vaughn. She was never a neighbor, I said, reading the file aloud. You planted her. You paid Caldwell to move an agent into the house across the street 6 months ago to wait for your signal. At that moment, the bedroom door of the suite opened. Kira Vaughn walked out. She was clearly supposed to be a surprise witness, a tearful victim to guilt trip me, but she stopped when she saw the camera. I just wanted to say that things got out of hand, Kira started, her voice trembling. I never meant to save it, Kira. I cut her off. Or should I call you Kira Caldwell? I have your real estate license history and your birth certificate. And Jordan just filed a formal complaint with the licensing board. You are not a victim. You are a corporate spy. Grant looked from Kira to his mother. The reality of it finally hit him. He had thought he was a player in the game, cheating on his boring wife. He realized now he was just a prop. You set me up, Grant whispered, his voice cracking. You told me she was safe. You told me Natalie was unstable. You made me do this. I did what was necessary to protect this family from a nobody, Celeste shouted, losing her cool for the first time. And you will sign this NDA, Natalie, because if you don't, I will bury you in so much bad press you will never get a job again. I own the narrative. I stood up. I picked up my bag. Actually, you don't, I said. You think I kept those audit documents for the newspapers. I know you can buy the press. Celeste, I know you can buy the headlines. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. That is why I did not send the proof of your embezzlement to the media, I said. I sent it to the State Corporate Ethics Committee and the Attorney General's office this morning. They are not interested in gossip. They are interested in fraud. You cannot buy their silence. Celeste's face turned the color of ash. The silence in the room was not fearful anymore. It was final. The emergency meeting of the Halston Family Trust took place on a rainy Thursday. Celeste sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, looking every inch the matriarch who believed she was untouchable. She did not know that the mandatory audit request I had filed was not just a piece of paper. It was a grenade rolled under her chair. I walked in. I was an outsider, an inconvenience, but I carried a binder that turned their family legacy into a criminal investigation. Jordan Pike stood next to me. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She laid out the timeline. She presented the payments to Caldwell Image Group, the falsified mental health narrative, and the drafted plan to force me into a facility using trust money. Using beneficiary funds to manufacture a medical crisis for a spouse violates Article 7 of your governance bylaws regarding ethical stewardship, Jordan stated, her voice echoing in the silent room. The board members turned to Grant. They were men and women in expensive suits who hated scandal more than they loved their own children. Why did you authorize these payments? The chairman asked, his face grim. Grant opened his mouth to lie. He looked at his mother, then at me. I placed my phone on the table and pressed play. Grant's voice from the bathroom recording, tinny but clear, filled the room. Mom told me to do it. She said we had to break her before she signed. That was the moment the alliance broke. Grant realized the ship was sinking, and he decided to use his mother as a life raft. It was her idea, Grant shouted, standing up and pointing a shaking finger at Celeste. I just wanted a divorce. She was the one who brought in Caldwell. I will sign anything. I will sign the affidavit against her. Just keep me out of the fraud investigation. Kira was standing near the wall, waiting to be called as a witness. But when the chairman looked at the evidence of her alias and her real estate license violations, he waved her away like a fly. But Kira started, her eyes wide with panic. Get her out of here, Celeste hissed. Kira was escorted out by security. She realized then that she was not a partner. She was just a disposable tool that had broken on the job. The vote was unanimous. The board invoked the morality clause. Celeste Halston was stripped of her voting rights, effective immediately. Control of the marital assets was transferred to a court-appointed custodian. With one caveat, I had to approve every single expense until the divorce was final. I did not smile. I did not cheer. I laid my terms on the table. I wanted a permanent restraining order and a signed, notarized admission that the mental instability narrative was a complete fabrication. I wanted my reputation scrubbed clean. I walked out of the boardroom for the last time. Grant followed me into the corridor. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Nat, he pleaded, reaching out a hand. I am sorry. Maybe down the road. I stopped. I turned to look at him. I did not lock the bathroom door that night to keep you in. Grant, I said quietly. I locked it to keep myself in, to keep me from going back to the woman who used to beg for your scraps. That woman is gone. I left Port Briar the next day. I moved to a city where no one knew the name Halston. Celeste lost her seat. Grant lost his image. Kira lost her license. And me, I sat on my new balcony, listening to the traffic below. For the first time in 5 years, the silence in my head was not waiting for a permission slip. It was just peace. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below to share your thoughts and connect with others. Do not forget to subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and support us by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.